is it true that some podcasters actually reached out, contacted Richard Allen in prison, and lied to him, hoping to trick him into confessing or saying something to?
I wouldn't say that exactly, but there were podcasters that apparently knew about this allegation from Dr. Wallace's notes that I didn't know about at the time. And I'm here at this very desk, and we got a drop of all these things that we would get from time to time. And I don't remember what month it was, but I looked at it and I knew I knew that this was from a podcaster, and I wouldn't say that they lied or tried to trick him. I think it was just a straight up, question about, do you want to plead guilty and your lawyers won't let you, something along those lines.
But they were leaked information, then used that.
I didn't know about it at that time. I didn't know about it, and I was like, what is that? That's just weird. I had too many other things to worry about, and I wasn't, I was bothered that people were reaching out to him and asking such things, but I didn't really think anything about it because I knew that I just thought that's a weird thing. Well, then I feel like it was a couple weeks later, we got, I think I was on the phone with Brad, and Brad said something like, hey, did you know that in Wallace's notes, she claims that Rick said that he wants to plead guilty, but we won't let him. I'm like, what? That's crazy or whatever. That's, and then I was like, oh, wait. Okay. A couple weeks ago, I saw an email from.
Okay. So just wanted to jump in here real quickly. What that was, again, my now seemingly exhaustive combing through all sorts of old video and podcasts and all this other stuff from everywhere around the Delphi trial. Again, murder sheet. This didn't occur to me. I'm putting together this timeline. I came on the other day. I was pretty pissed at some of what I believe are dubiously ethical, quasi unethical, straight up unethical per the Society of Professional Journalists or per the DART Trauma Center on Trauma-Informed Journalism at Columbia University. Murder sheets ethics are run afoul of all of that. So I came on and talked about that the other day. I was hit with a landslide of people contacting me. I haven't really had a chance to go through any of them because I honestly didn't realize that it was such a big deal when I kind of had it out with myself via YouTube over over what I think has gone wrong with journalism in regards to this case and in regards to Murder Sheet specifically, because they've placed themselves at the center of the narrative. But yeah, so a lot of people contacted me, and journalists get contacted a lot, and you have to kind of go through and parse things out. But a lot of the things that people are suggesting or have sent, and none of it I'm sharing necessarily, but what it has done is sort of reinforced some of what I had already suggested before in my previous video, was that it really sounds like they have leaked information, that perhaps they haven't been completely honest with their audience about their methodology, about who their sources truly are, and about accessing others' information in really unsettling ways. But I'm playing this from Defense Diaries specifically because I know that they won't strike me. but also because, this was one of the first interviews of the defense team. And I was really fascinated after the gag order, because the gag order was riddled with all sorts of problems. I mean, honestly, I blame all of this on the decision that was made to not allow cameras into the courtroom in this case. And I think that is something I hope to God that's reconsidered in the future going forward with high profile trials. There's pros and cons, but I think some of the cons that we're seeing right now are allowing people like, allowing a vacuum to grow up around a case that has involved any number of questionable actors acting for good or for ill. My problem are with the curious actors that position themselves as professionals or as authorities, and that's Murder Sheet. So specifically regarding this one clip, it struck me again as I have my little notebook full of now dates that I find interesting, where they hook up, where Murder Sheet and where leak timelines and several other releases of information seem to be pretty much in lockstep. And I didn't even realize it. I had to listen to this a couple of times because I didn't understand what Mr. Baldwin was really saying here. And what I hear him saying is that some podcasters contacted his client, who was being represented by 3 defense attorneys as he awaited his trial for the murder of 2 young girls, that a podcast, The Murder Sheet, consisting of a self-proclaimed, quote, journalist and, quote, an attorney, reached out to a represented party prior to, not even reached out to, listen, anybody can reach out to an inmate. Anybody can access that. Anybody has the right to do that. Whether or not it's the appropriate thing to do it's neither here nor there. My thing was, I was struck because I had heard Murder Sheet say something about this during a September podcast when I went back to listen to it. And it's all the way at the end of this podcast, buried in the very, very end, where Kevin Greenlee is speaking at the end of this transcript. And it's like, it was about some sort of depositions. And so ostensibly, this was just sort of the tail end here, sort of kicker.
So this is directly from the transcript. Again, it's at the end of this podcast. Let's see here. Okay, so, and this is from the transcript. It said, so before we go, I wanted to mention something for whatever it may be worth, and I'm going to choose my words very carefully here. So recently on the internet, there has been a story circulating, and this is a story that's not directly related to the facts of this case, and therefore it is not covered by the gag order, but it pertains to something that Anya and I think all of you listening would want to know about and would want to know it if it was true and accurate. So, okay, that's the setup. This is just going to bring you back here for a minute. So that's from the September 24th transcript. And that was Mr. Greenlee reading, or talking, and I'm reading. But keep in mind that what the words that are being used here, and the reason I'm pointing it out is because I had to read and reread this a few times, because it's kind of an insidious little bit of literature, if you will. But considering what Mr. Baldwin said about a podcaster reaching out to his client about something that was very specifically about the case, and then Mr. Greenlee teeing up where going to great pains to say, nay, nay, it was not about the case. I'll read that again. So back to the transcript. Therefore, it's not covered by the gag order. Okay. Right. So he's being very clear here. We're not contacting Mr. Allen on the eve of his trial about anything having to do with his case. Right. Because that would be in violation of the gag order. At least that seems to be what he's suggesting here in his own words. So they go on, okay, and say, quote, and we didn't feel we could come on and talk about the details of this story with you here on the program unless we knew for a fact it was indeed accurate. And so we reached out via text to Kathy Allen, the wife of the accused killer Richard Allen, and we asked, is this accurate? Okay. What is accurate? Right? So that's the question you might be asking yourself at this moment. What is it that they are saying here in this transcript? Well, it was a rumor that, again, the end of our September last year was a supposed rumor that there was a divorce in the offing between the Allens. There's absolutely no, they are using these murder sheet folks are using the people are saying sort of lead in. People are saying out there's this sort of rumor going around out there. We've heard whatever out there. Well, you know what? I've heard a lot of things, but I'm not going to tee it up to ask a question of a guy facing murder charges. But anyway, so back to this, right? So we've got it set up where murder sheet is making very clear here that they're not violating the gag order. They were not reaching out to Richard Allen under any under the auspices of talking to him about the case at all. So they go on. And they just texted Kathy Allen. Okay, it says, and quote, so she did not reply. And then at that point, as you may or may not know, Indiana has a mechanism in place which allows you to communicate electronically with people in different jails and prisons across the state. So we set up one of those communication systems and we got approved, presumably by Richard Allen, and we got approved to communicate with him. And so we sent him a message about the story asking him, is this true? Is this not true? Do you have anything you can tell us about it? He did not answer. But a few days after we sent the messages, we got a notification that we would no longer be allowed to send messages to Richard Allen and that our access had been cut off at the request of his attorney. So make of that what you will. But we wanted to share it with you in the interests of transparency. End quote. So let's see. Why? So I have some thoughts. First of all, a rumor about someone's marriage is not newsworthy. If you're TMZ, perhaps. But trying to say that we're being open and transparent with you about this rumor that has absolutely no basis in fact, that we maybe we made it up even to ask this question, right? We're going to be open and transparent with you. And this has nothing to do with the case, by the way. We were very careful not to violate the gag order. Because God Almighty, could you imagine if an Indiana attorney violated a gag order, or, anybody? Certainly, Mr. Allen has the right to speak with anyone he wants to. But can you just imagine? It's a problem, because what they don't say here is anything having to do with what Mr. Baldwin mentioned in the upfront, that podcasters he knew, had reached out to with knowledge or apparent knowledge about something that was alleged in the writings of Mr. Allen's then doctor, about supposedly wanting or being prevented from pleading guilty. Could you imagine? I mean, here's the thing. If they were so concerned about the representation that Mr. Allen was getting, then Mr. Greenlee, as an attorney, as he says, as a lawyer in the state of Indiana, should have filed a complaint, should have beat down the door to ensure that whatever it was they were concerned about, so concerned about, overly concerned about, right? It's unsettling. And it seems to me, maybe you did actually potentially some point or another violate the gag order. Maybe you're concerned because there's something out there that shows that you actually did ask about an ongoing criminal case, which would be a violation of all sorts of things, it seems to me, not the least of which the law and the rules of professional conduct. This is what we're dealing with, and this is why it bothers me so much. This is why. Because that's low. That's low. So they round it out with their, typical nonsense that they're sort of, aw shucks, well, our motto as journalists is if something's going on about we understand there's a gag order. This is from the transcript. We understand there's a gag order, but if there's something circulating out there, we want to give people their chance to say their side of the story. So when it's something that's not about the gag order, when it's something about some kind of just general stuff that's getting attention, it's our job essentially to at least try to communicate with people and get their thoughts and blah, 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 blah. That's what we're dealing with. And I think it's tragic. It's tragic. I think it's morally reprehensible. I find it stunning, honestly. And again, I'm real new to all of this, so what the hell do I know? Maybe this has been going on and on and on. But I hope to God, I hope they just leave it alone. I hope they leave him alone, so the courts and the actual justice system can afford him whatever rights there are, and just leave the family alone. At this point, trauma-informed journalism, it's really important. And that's one of the other things I want to point out here is that at that point in time, when they contacted him, no matter what it was for, as a trauma-informed journalist, which is what I am, working with survivors of all kinds of atrocities, literally atrocities, literally genocides, and domestic crimes as well. But one of the things that you do is that at that point in time, Mr. Allen was afforded the presumption of innocence. So you have to balance your harm. Are you going to reach out to a man who's presumed innocent, who has been in isolation, who has been de facto tortured, forced medication? And are you going to reach out and ask him about whether or not his wife's going to divorce him? I mean, I'm not. I'm not, because it's immaterial. But I think that I got a feeling that was the backup, right? That wasn't what they were really interested in. And how did they get the information about something that had been written down by arguably the disgraced Dr. Walla? It's not right. But anyway.